Adapting games into anime is a fairly common thing to do. It's pretty fun to see a lot of the time too if you don't have access to the game. It allows you to connect with the story when you'd otherwise be unable to. It's like when historical records get adapted into movies or TV shows. There's this familiarity to those who recognize the history, and new viewers get to truly understand history in a way that they may not have expected. I say anime has a pretty notable history with this. The Type Moon Fate IP is about incarnating and summoning the heroes of history to fight in a grand battle for the legendary Holy Grail. For a decent amount of people into anime, it's very likely the extent of how they know some figures of history, if they aren't a history major or something. But there's also some smaller, unique approaches to adapting history for entertainment. Bakumatsu Rock, Samurai Jam, is a PSP rhythm game released in 2014 along with a manga, anime, sequel game, and musical all within a year. I wouldn't say it was a good anime by the means of all the hits we've been getting in the last few years. However, it's a fun show that knows what it is. That is what makes it good. Ryoma Sakamoto takes on the Japanese government not as a late-era samurai as he was in real life, but as a rock and roll idol. It feels like a strange stretch from an anime perspective, but also in the year before, 2013, Shobai Rock's original game was released, and in 2015, it would get an adaptation as a fairly beloved music anime. Likewise, Utano Prince Sama, adapted in 2011, was a well-loved Bishonen music-based anime that feels very similar to Bakumatsu Rock in aesthetic and purpose. The difference, however, is definitely the scope of things trying to be linked. The story wants to be a historical story, but also have marketability. There's aspects of fan service marketability, music marketing, and also a sense of nationalism as the story adapts the history of Ryoma's ideals and nationalism within Japan amongst the group Bakumatsu. Within the realm of real history, Ryoma was a well-known political figure of Japan who lived shortly before the Meiji era, and who directly opposed the Shinsengumi, a small military force of the late Tokugawa period. This is also known as the Edo period, but not opposed directly to the emperor around 1850 and 1860s. A lot of political ideals of the time revolved around isolationism, where many opposed connecting with the industrialization, modernization, and political connections of entering the world stage. Eras in Japan are typically indicated by the ruling emperor, and so some are not named after notable things or defined by the population's era, like millennials, Gen Z, etc., or even the events, ideals, or technological advancements, romantics, information age, postmodern, world war, etc. But it all depends on the context of what emperor it occurs under. The Meiji era of Japan is really well known for heavily adapting Western technologies and socio-political structures, something that Sakamoto supported, not in order to welcome Western ideals themselves, but to strengthen the moral and public structure of Japan in its entirety. The following era, the Taisho period, usually reflects how much of an impact the Meiji era really had, as things like trains, electricity, radio, and such were being more implemented in bigger cities following an earthquake in Kanto that lasted anywhere between 4 to 10 minutes. The damage in that ended up being a big part of why there are so many more modern infrastructures put in place in this era. It provided a natural reason for a lot of radical modernization of the time. To solidify the time and place in your mind, animes like Mononoke and plenty of Bakumatsu-tiled anime really capture the mix of modernism that began to appear in the world, and then the traditional designs of Japan that are still very present in everyday life. Appare Ranma takes place in mid to late Meiji, ending the 1800s, and Japan's isolationism. Demon Slayer is within the Taisho period, the time directly following the Meiji period reforms, and Japan's first steps into the international stage. From a meme standpoint even, in the History of Japan video, the Meiji period is considered to be during Matthew Perry's arrival in Japan.
Knock knock. It's the United States. Open the country. Stop having it be closed.
But this event happens before the Emperor Meiji, who this era is named after, is actually put in place in the government. In the Tokugawa period, the one we're on the tail end of through this story, the era itself is often known as the late Edo period because following Edo's end, a large conflict surrounding who would actually take the throne took place. Tokugawa rose as the leader, but his reign would be one of the most tumultuous times within Japanese politics before Meiji was put into place. So hopefully it makes sense why it was so much of a stretch that Ryoma Sakamoto taking on the government with a guitar and rock and roll is a strange concept, because this story is literally set in the final part of the Tokugawa period. It's out of place even if the story had been something more steampunk or industrial like Apare. It's like George Washington owning an electric guitar, which, while cool in concept, would mean every time he went to fight the British, it'd mean he'd be fighting with a guitar and the power of rock and roll and not with guns and cannons. In some ways, it does not capture the extent of importance that figures had as real historical figures, but tries to have a campy expression and interest of political freedom that rock and roll is known for that would match the vibe, so to speak, of their political ideals. It's a tough line to walk, but the show does its best. And it's entertainment. Like I said, I did totally watch George go absolutely devil mode on a guitar to defeat the British with some punk new wave as they absolutely obliterate logic to just fucking rock battle. And that's what Samurai Jam is. It's a very fun romp through history where Bishonen boys throw their rock and roll souls into the world. However, I wouldn't say it was exactly a success. The show definitely knew what it was and had a clear understanding of how to build itself, but I'd say it maybe rushed its pace, putting the marketability before the natural flow of the story. I compared it earlier to Show by Rock, which I do think was a better show until its later seasons, which ran into the same problem, a sense of marketability over fulfilling story development. Newer shows like Bocchi allow themselves the pace to find a fulfilling balance of character story development and relationships. Much of Bakumatsu Rock's episodes end up as plot dumps, rushed moments, or just some generally unearned moments. Maybe because it's only 12 episodes, they felt no need to hold back on things they wanted to do. But it ends up making the show feel like a product of the times and not a show. But it's not like it's a bad product. It's just, you can tell that it is a product. But I'm not shitting on the show because I dislike it or think it's a waste of some sort. I actually quite love it. I love a show that kind of knows how to market itself, and that's Bakumatsu. You can't tell me otherwise because there are some moments that are practically camp and so well done in this show that they had to have been thought through to the point of how the audience would react. The songs were always solid, deeply lyrical, even if they weren't all that varied and repeated several times. Quite a few of the music industry style jokes or setups were good too. They were genuine reflections of the industry then and now. To further prove my point though, here's something I enjoyed in every single episode. I enjoy the first joke in the episode that Ryoma keeps getting cut off every time he is about to play. It makes a great moment when he finally does at the end of the episode, but it was also predictable that would be the one moment he actually got to play. I like that this sort of blends the real-life political exclusion and modern media exclusion of locations. The boys are banned from playing in various places due to government mandates. There have been genre persecutions or bans, and this sort of plays on both in a way that I like. The continued banning of guitars at the beginning of the series is actually the banning of swords that samurais faced during that time period. Here they focus a lot on the Shinsengumi, whose music is more idol style than rock. I love the way that there's a TV crew that follows them around doing a mini TV documentary. It has a very perfect tone and inside jokes if you've ever seen a Japanese interview documentary. The running joke by its own merit in this episode is hilarious, but also the way it kind of perfectly feeds into doujin work. I can so perfectly imagine the way a fan can take this episode's plot and make their own R18 version just by turning up the emotions a bit. This is also a bit of the way you can tell that this is a product. You don't simply create these moments like this, so exactly without this expectation. This is the first episode with actual fighting. And though it's not particularly impressive, it's exciting to see. Katsura being the one to face it too makes it fun. For the quiet member to be the one to say, "I'll be the one to stand up in this fight," is fun. Professor's song is probably the most edgy one so far too. A big favorite. I love the crowd shots in this one. They really have this knack for making the world feel like there are people in it. There aren't a lot of people walking around, but in the concerts, it feels like they really took the time to make the crowd feel like people connecting over music. I think Kondo's song probably solidifies this. His voice is high and smooth, and the music is sort of bossa nova. And this, going into the final act of this episode, makes the crowd feel real when they eventually are freed from their trances. I love the return of the two fangirls from the first couple episodes. Again, it kind of highlights that thing with crowd shots where no matter what, there is a care for the world being built. That being said, I also love Okita flying in on a Pegasus yelling, "Surprise!" If you're enjoying anything I am saying to this point too, you are kind of perfect for the series. You get what it's doing, even in its simpler moments. Now this episode is wonderful. The Dark Cherries are introduced. I think that all three of these women are based on real women of the time. Oryo is Ryoma's wife, but I think that it's kind of rushed here, but still works. I think the best part, though, is the way the girls fantasize these moments. It's very obviously the product bait here, but it's in such a high quality that I almost feel like they enjoyed thinking up scenarios if they weren't directly from the game. Literally every fantasy here is hilarious and I think takes the spotlight throughout the episode. Sorry, I'm steeping my tea. I'm steeping my tea. My sick tea. My Shayla. There's a sincere moment here where Ryoma approached Yataro, but they don't say a lot, but reminisce in a way that strikes me as a sincere reflection of something that probably does happen for an artist who hits it big. There's this remembrance of the way you used to think of becoming famous versus the way you end up becoming famous, that you may not click as being different. To you, it's the same hard work you strove to do before, but to others, it might actually be very different because they can see the direction they've pushed that artist to. The little blush Takasugi gives at the start of this episode is all I needed, but when he later pulls out a fucking gun, I lost it. It happened multiple times this episode and is crazy each time. I lost it. Every time it showed up. It's a wild moment, even though it's played very straight-faced, but the reveal of the gun somehow so absolutely broke me mentally. That being said, this is a very good episode overall, nearing the peak and end of the show. The way Ryoma realizes what the spreading of rock, or more so in real life, the spreading of a new ideology, can do to the life of those not directly involved in it and opposing the running government, it's hard to gauge what you should do. I realize this time that the Over Mirage song is referring to a honey trap. It's luring its listeners into a sweet melody and deception for the purpose of entrapping them. It's one of those things that's very clever about the writing in the show, where they know the comparisons to make for people to understand the sort of essence of the real history being retold. There's a clear fight for freedom that they felt they couldn't get under the shogun's rule. where they felt trapped. I kind of love the angel performance and that it leads to the singing of the crowd. Quite literally, everyone sort of gets this moment to sing, though my favorite part is after the credits. Matthew Perry is showcased at the end, a reference to the sequel game where the borders are opened and America comes over. Well, America forcibly opens the borders. While this version of Perry is quite the opposite of the real one, it makes a really hilarious teaser for the end of the show, and one that ultimately never got another season animated. But I love Perry's look here. The high skirt slit, knee-high leather boots, the bralette blouse combo.
It's rock and roll!
And it even convinced me to get the game. I have a PS Vita, so hopefully by the time this video comes out, I'll have actually played it. But something about the show hit that itch of a fun show, even while not really being a satisfying one. Overall, there are moments that are goofy and yet sincere. There are scenes that are rushed into, like they're important, but then resolve without any tension really following through. I enjoyed it, but in the sense that it gave me some good chuckles while I was doing other things. Then there were a few times, too, where I genuinely went, damn, that goes kind of hard. It's a complex product that knows what it wants to be, and I love it for that. Hi, I'm fully sick this time. So, thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. As you can see, I've opened a Patreon. And if you would like your name on the end credits here, consider supporting me there. You also get access to exclusive posts and all of that. If you're in the $5 a month or higher tier, the highest tier allows you to drop in your own opinions or participate in polls for deciding the next video or parts of the next videos. So if you would like to do that, consider supporting me on Patreon. But really, all you need to do is like the video, maybe subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, I would appreciate you sharing it as well. Part of why I do this is to share cool stuff. Hopefully see you in the next one. This was not supposed to be the video that was supposed to come out, but you know, life. So I hope you look forward to the next one and the big one, which I teased on the YouTube community posts. It was supposed to be this one. But stuff happens, and I had to rearrange it, so I hope you look forward to when that video does come out. It's still gonna happen, it just is gonna take longer, and I want to give it time to properly cook. So I hope you look forward to it, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!